I am.
Okay, so we've got chapter 11, we've got Bramble. Abigail had no trouble in training Polly and her family to roost with the rest of the flock at night. That same evening, she went out just before dusk and called Polly to the hen house. And they all went in like lambs, she said afterwards. Lambs couldn't get through that pop hole, said Bob. They're too big. It's just an expression, Bob, his mother said. It just means they went in quietly. Lambs aren't quiet, said Bob. They're always making a row. Silly things, wanting their mummies. Like you, said Prudence. Bob began to go red in the face. But before he could utter his usual cuss words, his father said, "Don't be so catty, Prue," which made Prudence go pale, and Bob returned to his usual colour. Meow, he said under his breath. Just stop it, you two children, said their mother. And to Abigail, she said, "I expect Galahad's glad to have Polly back, isn't he?" "Oh yes," Abigail said. "They're perched side by side, just like a pair of lovebirds." And indeed, in the next few days that followed, it was plain that, while Galahad might now have a great many wives, Polly was his favourite by far. Each night they sat together on the perch, murmuring sweet nothings to one another until they fell asleep. And during the day, as the flock ranged about the barnyard and the orchard, Galahad was seldom far from Polly's side. One fine day, a month or so after the Duke of Severn's visit, it happened once again that none of the family was at home. The term had started, the farmhand Moss had gone to the market, and Mrs. Brown was shopping while Bob was at play school. But this time it was not a man selling foodstuffs who came up the farmyard, but a dog looking for something to eat. A lean, wolfish mongrel it was, a stray with no collar and no food in its belly, and no hesitation about chasing the first chicken it saw in the barnyard. By chance, this was one of Polly's children, and though it ran for the orchard as fast as it could, the dog was faster, and it began to look as though 13 would be an unlucky number after all. By another chance, Polly was not around, but was sitting in a nest box inside the hen house, about to lay an egg. And the rest of the flock, of course, simply exploded left, right and centre in a perfect panic of squawks and screeches and frantic flappings. All except one. The dog had caught up with the fleeing bird and was gripping it by one wing when its wretched victim's cry for help was suddenly and dramatically answered. Galahad came racing across the orchard on his long, powerful legs, his ruff raised, his wings spread, seeming in his fury to be twice his normal size. He was travelling at top speed when he hit the dog, and despite the difference in weight, he bowled it over. It gave a yell of surprise, while its quarry, released, ran thankfully away. The dog was not done though. It picked itself up and seeing, as it thought, just another chicken before it, it leapt growling at Galahad. Polly, her egg laid, came out of the hen house at this point to see her husband, apparently about to meet his end at almost exactly the same spot, had she known it, where her father had met his. What chance had Galahad against an animal twice the size of a fox? The answer was soon plain. Galahad's Indian game blood was boiling, and as the dog rushed in, he jumped in the air above it and slashed its back with his cruel, razor-sharp spurs. Once, twice more, the dog ran at the cockerel, and each time the jaws snapped and missed, and the spurs struck and ripped. Suddenly the raider hadn't had enough. Tail tucked tightly between its legs and yapping with terror, it fled, bleeding from a dozen scratches, while Galahad sped it on its way with a final flurry of pecks. Proudly the victor returned and flew up on the orchard gate and flapped his wings and crowed in triumph to the world and his wife. She in her turn saluted her hero with words which, perhaps fortunately, he could not understand. "Galahad!" she cried. "Clever girl, Galahad!" Nothing of this drama was known to the Browns, though Abigail did find a scatter of feathers beside the old fallen apple trunk in the orchard, and noticed also that one of the baker's dozen looked rather dishevelled. It was a young cockerel, and though Abigail hadn't given thought to the sexes of Polly and Galahad's first offspring, her father had. "You realise," he said at breakfast one day, "that one of the 13 birds that were hatched in the dog kennel, out of the 13 birds that were hatched in the dog kennel, only 3 were pullets. All the other 10 are cockerels, and you needn't think we're going to keep all that lot, Abby. There are 10 Sunday lunches there. We could have one this weekend." "Oh, Dad!" cried Abigail. "I couldn't eat one of Polly's children." "I could," said Prudence. "And me," said Bob. "I like roast chicken," said Prudence. "And me," said Bob. When Abigail was upset, she neither coloured like her brother nor paled like her sister. Her distress signal was a trembling of her lower lip, and this her mother now saw. "What are you doing?" Her mother now saw, and quickly said, "Hang on." Quickly said, "Why not sell the cockerels, Bill? That's the best way out of it." Her husband was about to dispute this, but then he too saw that Abigail was far from happy. "All right," he said. "I'll take him to the market next week." Abigail looked happy at this, Prudence and Bob less so. what are we going to have for Sunday lunch then? Asked Prudence. Oh, a nice piece of beef, her mother said, or perhaps a leg of lamb, or a joint of pork. Good, said Bob. I like all of them bester. At market, a salesman who saw that Farmer Brown had a pen of cockles for sale came up and introduced himself. I sell all types of poultry food, he said. Perhaps I could have the pleasure of your custom. I'm new to the area, you see. Thought you were, said the farmer. I used to deal with a different chap in your firm. What happened to him? He, took early retirement, said the rep. Oh? Yes, he had a kind of nervous breakdown. Overwork? Not exactly. He had an experience that frayed his mind. Kind of a hallucination, I guess. He couldn't forget it, and of course it affected his work. Happened on the farmland here somewhere, not sure which one. What was the experience then? Asked Farmer. The salesman laughed. Shame to poke fun at a poor chap, really, he said, but he went round telling everyone that he'd been spoken to by a hen. Grief. Sorry, Bramble. Oh, no, that's the end of the chapter.
Is that the end?
Yeah.